Tasteful. Oh, you want it, you got it.
Look at the size of that ass.
Oh, check it out, Santino!
The Worm, Scotty to Hotty. The Worm might be one of the most theatrical and drawn-out finishing moves in WWE history, and that's exactly why fans loved it. Scotty to Hotty wasn't known for brute strength or high-flying ability. He was known for personality, and the Worm was a perfect extension of that. After landing a basic bulldog, Scotty would pause. He'd feel the energy of the crowd, build suspense, and then suddenly break into a full routine. Arm flails, exaggerated foot stomps, and a giant leap into a chop. A literal chop to the opponent's chest or throat. And you know what? The audience loved it. It was never about how effective the move looked. It was about creating a moment. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, that mattered just as much as anything else. In fact, I'd argue that the Worm worked because it was so ridiculous. It made the fans part of the finish. They chanted, they clapped, they anticipated the whole sequence. And honestly, that's a win in my book.
Famous Worm.
The Cobra, Santino Marella. Comedy wrestling isn't easy to do right, but Santino Marella had it down to an art. The Cobra started as a running joke. He would reach into his tights mid-match, pull out a green sock, slip it on with flair, and then start winding up his arm like it was a deadly snake. He'd hiss, he'd make eye contact with the crowd, he'd sell this idea that the Cobra had a life of its own. Then came the strike, a quick jab to the neck or chest, and somehow it would lead to a 3 count. Was it believable? Not really. Was it hilarious? Absolutely. It fit Santino's character perfectly. An over-the-top, lovable goof who could somehow win big matches with sheer absurdity. He used it on everyone from Zack Ryder to Jack Swagger, and fans didn't care if it made sense.
Dig it for the Cobra. Cobra strikes.
The Stink Face, Rikishi. Let's be honest, there's nothing quite like the Stink Face. You could argue all day about how effective it was as a wrestling move, but as a statement, it was unmatched. Rikishi was a powerhouse, fast, agile, and over 400 pounds. But instead of finishing matches with a massive slam or super kick, he'd sometimes win by rubbing his rear end in a dazed opponent's face. After cornering his opponent, Rikishi would turn around, grip the ropes, and then back into his opponent. What followed was pure humiliation. Opponents looked like they had been hit by a truck, and that's what made it work. It was different. It made people laugh, cringe, and cheer all at once. Whether it was Val Venus or Vince McMahon himself, nobody wanted to take the Stink Face. And that's fear, that dread, is what made it so iconic.
Don't tell me. No! Stink face on Lita!
The Boogie Slam, the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman was a character straight out of a fever dream. He smashed clocks on his head, crawled like a demon, and covered people in actual worms. He wasn't the best wrestler technically, but he didn't need to be. His entire appeal was shock value, and his finishing move, the Boogie Slam, fits that mold perfectly. It was a modified pump handle slam, but it looked extra brutal when performed after all the chaos he brought. Imagine being distracted by someone vomiting worms onto your chest, then suddenly being lifted up and slammed to the mat. That's the Boogie Slam experience. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't complex, but in the context of the Boogeyman's character, it worked wonders. He wasn't about athleticism, he was about fear, and the Boogie Slam was the final note in his horror movie performance.
Worms in Mrs. Mouth. Go back to reality television, you freak.
The People's Elbow, The Rock. This is probably the most famous weird finisher of all time. It's a simple running elbow drop, but with The Rock's flair, it became one of the most electrifying finishers in WWE history. First, he tosses the elbow pad into the crowd, a perfect souvenir. Then he hits the ropes once, twice, pauses, and then drops the elbow with theatrical precision. That delay, that build-up, it was all part of the charm, and when the crowd saw it coming, they erupted. The Rock could have ended matches with a hip toss and fans still would have gone wild, but he chose to make something small feel larger than life. That's a rare skill. Number 5. The Rear View, Naomi. Naomi is one of the most unique performers of her generation. From the moment she debuted, she brought athleticism, innovation, and a sense of style unlike anyone else. So when she introduced the rear view as her finisher, it made perfect sense, even if it was a bit unusual. She sprints off the ropes, leaps into the air, and nails her opponent with a high-speed backside attack. It's a literal spin and bump move, and honestly, it works. The move looks smooth, clean, and powerful, especially when you consider the timing it takes to pull off. And paired with her glow-in-the-dark entrance and flashy gear, it becomes a natural part of her presentation. The rear view is one of those finishers that only Naomi could make feel legitimate, and she nailed it. Number 4. The Pounce, Monty Brown. Monty Brown wasn't around in WWE for very long, but fans who saw him in TNA or WWE's ECW reboot remember him for one thing: the Pounce. And let me tell you, this move looked like it hurt bad. He'd circle his opponent, time it just right, and then rushed into a shoulder block that launched people across the ring. Sometimes over the ropes, sometimes into the turnbuckles. It was like getting hit by a cannonball with legs. The Pounce had no frills, no setup, just raw force. The fans went nuts every single time. Simple? Yes, but very effective. Number 3. The Big Wiggle, Norman Smiley. Norman Smiley might not have had a world title run, but he left a legacy of laughs, especially with his finishing sequence, the Big Wiggle. This wasn't just a move, it was a full-on performance. Smiley would gain control, start gyrating his hips in the most exaggerated way possible, and then transition into a submission. The move itself? Usually a crossface or a chicken wing, but to the lead-up, pure gold. The dance would confuse opponents and entertain the crowd. It was different. It was lighthearted, and honestly, it made people remember him. In a sea of serious competitors, Smiley brought fun. The Big Wiggle may not have been devastating, but it was unforgettable. Number 2. The Canadian Destroyer, Petey Williams. When Petey Williams first hit the Canadian Destroyer, fans couldn't believe it. A flipping pile driver? It looked impossible. It looked dangerous. And it looked amazing. At the same time, it was a finisher nobody else dared try. The timing, the cooperation, the athleticism, it took real skill. And for a while, it felt like a rare jewel. You only saw it in big matches. And when it happened, people lost their minds. Fast forward to today, and everyone from Rey Mysterio to Bad Bunny has pulled it off. It's still awesome, don't get me wrong, but it's gone from shocking to standard. That transition is what makes it weird. A move once seen as impossible is now part of the weekly highlight reel, and in a way, that's the weirdest twist of all. Number 1. The Mandible Claw, Mankind. The Mandible Claw isn't just weird, it's disturbing. Mick Foley's alter ego, Mankind, would jam 2 fingers into his opponent's mouth and press on a nerve under the tongue. That's it. That's the whole move. And yet, it was horrifying. He'd thrash, he'd scream, the opponent would convulse like they were being possessed, and when Foley introduced Mr. Socko, a filthy sock puppet he kept tucked in his tights, it went from creepy to iconic. Nobody else could have made this work, but Foley, he made it legendary. The Mandible Claw's weird, gross, and brilliant, just like Mankind himself. WWE has always been about more than just technical holds and hard-hitting slams. It's about characters, storytelling, and moments that stick with you. These finishers, they were weird, they were wild, but they were part of what made wrestling so unforgettable. Some made us laugh, some made us cheer, some made us shake our heads, but they all had one thing in common. They were entertaining, and at the end of the day, that's what professional wrestling is all about. Which weird finisher was your favorite? Or is there one we left off the list? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more deep dives into wrestling's most memorable moments. Thanks for hanging out, and as always, I'll see you ringside.